Sophia Reynolds woke up to the faint glow of her phone screen, illuminating the dark bedroom. The soft buzz of a notification barely registered in her half-conscious state, but something in her gut told her to check it. She reached for the phone on the nightstand, blinking as her eyes adjusted to the brightness. One new message, from Ryan Caldwell. "It's over. I filed for divorce. Don't contact me." Sophia sat up instantly, her breath catching in her throat. Her fingers trembled as she reread the message, hoping she had misunderstood. This had to be a mistake. Ryan, her husband, the man she had loved, the man she had built a life with, was divorcing her. Through a text message. She scrambled to call him, pressing his number with shaking hands. Straight to voicemail. She tried again, disconnected. A cold chill ran through her. Something was wrong. Ryan wasn't just leaving her, he was erasing her. Heart pounding, she threw back the covers and got out of bed. The apartment was eerily silent. She expected to hear the hum of the coffee machine in the kitchen, expected to see Ryan moving about as he usually did before heading to work. But when she stepped into the living room, a sickening realization hit her. His things were gone. The space where his keys usually sat. Empty. The suit jacket he always draped over the chair. Missing. Sophia's chest tightened as she rushed to the bedroom closet. Half of it was bare, his clothes, his suitcase, his expensive watches, all gone. Her knees buckled, and she had to grip the doorframe to steady herself. This wasn't just an impulsive decision. He had planned this. Dread clawed at her as she grabbed her laptop from the desk, her mind racing. If he planned this, then she opened her banking app and froze. Balance, $0 and 0 cents. The air left her lungs. He took everything, her savings, their joint account, even the emergency fund she had carefully built over the years. All of it was gone. Her hands flew to her mouth as a choked sob escaped her lips. How? How could he do this to her? They had spent years together, shared everything. He had told her he loved her, told her they were a team. Her phone slipped from her grasp, landing on the bed with a dull thud. A numbness spread through her, dulling the sharp edges of panic as she stared blankly at the empty closet. She had nothing, no money, no explanation, no husband, just a text message and a vanished bank account. A sharp knock on the door yanked her out of her daze. Sophia turned, her mind still foggy with shock. Who could it be at this hour? She walked to the door, hesitating for a moment before unlocking it. A man in a dark suit stood before her, holding a yellow envelope. His expression was unreadable. "Sophia Reynolds?" he asked. She nodded, her voice barely a whisper. "Yes?" He handed her the envelope. "You've been served." Her fingers curled around the thick paper, her pulse pounding in her ears. The man turned and walked away without another word. Sophia stared at the envelope, dread pooling in her stomach. Slowly, she tore it open, her hands trembling. Official divorce filing. Caldwell versus Reynolds. She felt like the ground beneath her had disappeared. Ryan had filed for divorce before even telling her. Sophia let out a shaky breath, the betrayal slicing through her like a blade. How long had he been planning this? How long had he been pretending? Her mind raced back to the past few months, the late nights at work, the secretive phone calls, the sudden business trips. She had assumed it was just work stress, had convinced herself that every relationship had rough patches. But now, everything made sense. Ryan had never intended to stay, and worse, he had ensured she had nothing to fall back on. Her head spun as she tried to process it all. The apartment, the bills, her entire life had been built around trusting him, and now, in the span of a single morning, it had all been taken away. Tears burned at the back of her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She wouldn't break. Not yet. Sophia forced herself to move. She grabbed her phone and dialed Ryan's number again. Still disconnected, she clenched her jaw. Fine. If he wouldn't answer, She'd find him herself. She pulled on a jacket and rushed out the door. Sophia's search for answers. Sophia's car sped through the city streets, her mind running in circles. There was one place left where she could get answers: Ryan's office. She parked outside Caldwell Enterprises, a towering glass building where Ryan had worked for years. He had built his career here, climbing the ranks until he was one of the firm's top executives. Sophia stormed inside, barely acknowledging the receptionist. "I need to see Ryan Caldwell," she demanded, her voice sharper than she intended. The receptionist blinked, caught off guard. "I'm sorry, but Mr. Caldwell no longer works here." Sophia's stomach dropped. "What?" The woman glanced at her screen. "He resigned 3 weeks ago." Sophia gripped the counter. 3 weeks ago. So he had been planning this for months. She felt the weight of reality crashing down on her. Ryan had cut every tie. He had left his job, emptied their accounts, filed for divorce, all before she even knew what was happening. The betrayal felt suffocating. She turned and walked out in a daze. Outside, the cold air hit her, but she barely felt it. Ryan was gone, and he had taken everything with him. She had no money, no husband, and no idea what to do next. But as she stood there, heartbroken and lost, something inside her hardened. She wouldn't be destroyed. She wouldn't let him win. Ryan thought he had taken everything from her, but he had underestimated the wrong woman. Sophia sat in her car outside Ryan's former office, gripping the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles turned white. The receptionist's words still echoed in her mind. He resigned 3 weeks ago. Everything she thought she knew about her life, her marriage, and the man she had loved was unraveling before her eyes. But as the weight of betrayal pressed down on her, her mind drifted backward to the beginning. 3 years earlier, the perfect love story. The first time Sophia met Ryan Caldwell, she thought he was the most charming man she had ever encountered. He had an effortless confidence, a charisma that drew people toward him. He wasn't just good-looking, he knew he was good-looking. And he carried himself like a man who always got what he wanted. And for a while, what he wanted was her. They met at an upscale networking event in New York City, where Sophia, still an ambitious young financial analyst, had been invited by a colleague. She wasn't supposed to be there. She had been a last-minute addition, filling in for someone who had cancelled. She had felt out of place among the expensive suits and designer dresses, sipping her overpriced cocktail and hoping to make a quick exit. Then Ryan approached her. "I don't think I've seen you here before," he said smoothly, offering a charming smile. Sophia had turned, slightly caught off guard. "That's because I don't usually go to these things." "Then I guess tonight's my lucky night," he said with a grin, extending his hand. Ryan Caldwell. His confidence was intoxicating. His deep voice carried just the right amount of intrigue, and before she knew it, she was laughing, drawn into his world. Ryan had made her feel special that night. He listened to her talk about her work, her aspirations, her plans for the future. He told her about his dreams of building something greater, of climbing the corporate ladder until he owned the whole damn building. Sophia had admired his ambition. She hadn't known back then how much ambition could be a dangerous thing. The early years. A love story built on illusions. Their romance had been fast and intense. Ryan swept her off her feet, romantic weekend getaways, candlelit dinners, whispered promises of a future together. He made her feel like the center of his world. He would pull her close and murmur, "I don't want a love that's simple. I want a love that changes everything." Sophia had believed him, so when he proposed just a year later in front of a Paris skyline, she had said yes without hesitation. She thought she was marrying a man who wanted to build a life with her. She had no idea she was marrying a man who was already building an escape plan. The first signs of trouble. The shift was subtle at first. Ryan worked longer hours. He became secretive about finances, brushing off her questions with smooth excuses. "Don't worry about it, babe. I've got everything under control." Sophia wanted to believe him. After all, he had been the one who encouraged her to quit her job, promising that his income could support them both. "You don't have to stress over work anymore," he had said. "Focus on what you love. Take time for yourself." At first, it had felt like a dream. Long mornings at cafes, yoga classes, the freedom to explore new passions. But slowly, the dream began to crack. A marriage built on lies. One night, about a year into their marriage, Sophia had woken up to find Ryan missing from their bed. She had found him in the living room, sitting in the dim glow of his laptop, whispering on the phone. The moment she stepped closer, he slammed the laptop shut. She had frowned. "What are you doing?" "Just work stuff." His tone was clipped. She hesitated. "Why are you doing work stuff at 2 a.m? Ryan ran a hand through his hair. "Sophia, can we not do this right now?" The coldness in his voice had unsettled her. That was the first time she had truly wondered if there was something he wasn't telling her. But she had convinced herself she was just being paranoid. Ryan loved her. He was building a future for them, wasn't he? The breaking point. A warning. She didn't see coming. 6 months before he disappeared, Sophia had gone out for dinner with her friend Lillian, a sharp-witted lawyer who had never been fully convinced about Ryan. As they sipped their wine, Lillian had leaned forward and asked, "You ever check your joint accounts?" Sophia had blinked. "What?" Lillian's expression was unreadable. "Humor me. Do you check them?" Sophia hesitated. "Not really. Ryan handles most of it." Lillian had sighed. "That's a mistake, a big one." Sophia had laughed it off at the time. Ryan would never do anything to betray her. Right. Now, standing in the ruins of her life, she realized just how wrong she had been. Back to the present, facing the truth. Sophia blinked, pulling herself back into reality. The past had been beautiful, but it had also been a lie. She gripped the divorce papers in her hands, her rage simmering beneath the surface. Ryan had played her. He had built a perfect illusion, made her believe they were a team, a love story for the ages. And all along, he had been planning his exit. But if he thought she was going to crumble, he was dead wrong. She wasn't the same naive woman who had fallen for his charm. She was stronger now, and she was going to make sure he regretted every single decision that led him to this moment. Ryan Caldwell might have stolen her money, but he would never steal her power. Sophia sat at her kitchen table, the divorce papers spread out before her. The words blurred as she stared at them, her mind still trying to process the past 24 hours. It felt surreal, as if she had stepped into someone else's nightmare. Ryan was gone. The bank account was empty. Everything she had built her life around had vanished overnight. She took a deep breath, willing herself to think logically. What next? The reality hit her like a freight train. She had bills due in 2 weeks. The rent, the utilities, the credit card payments, all of it was in her name, and she had no money. Her hands trembled as she grabbed her phone and dialed her bank's customer service. Maybe, just maybe, there was a mistake. After a long wait, a representative finally answered. "Ma'am, I'm sorry to inform you that all transactions from your joint account were legally processed. Since both parties had equal access, we cannot retrieve the funds." Sophia's stomach sank. There must be something I can do. He emptied everything. He left me with nothing. A pause. I understand how frustrating this must be, but unfortunately there is no legal recourse. You may need to seek an attorney for further advice. She swallowed hard, her throat burning. "Thank you." As she ended the call, the weight of reality settled over her. No money, no way to fight back. For the first time since Ryan had disappeared, the panic finally took hold. Desperation and reality check, Sophia spent the next few hours calling anyone who might have information about Ryan's whereabouts. His family. They claimed they hadn't heard from him. His friends. Suddenly, they were too busy to talk. His old office? He had resigned weeks ago. He had cut every single tie. By noon, Sophia was shaking, the hunger in her stomach mixed with the raw anxiety surging through her veins. She opened her fridge, expecting to grab something small to eat. It was nearly empty. She hadn't even realized how little she had left. Ryan had always handled the groceries, her hands clenched into fists. He had planned everything so perfectly, but she wasn't going to let him break her. She grabbed a notebook and started making a plan. Step 1. Cut unnecessary expenses. She cancelled every subscription Ryan had left on their account. Gym memberships, streaming services, unnecessary credit card charges. If she was going to survive, every dollar mattered. Next, she called her landlord. She took a deep breath when he answered. "Hi, Mr. Connors. This is Sophia Reynolds from Unit 15B. I had an unexpected financial situation, and I was wondering if I could get an extension on my rent payment this month." A long pause. Finally, her landlord sighed. "Look, Sophia, you've always paid on time. I can give you an extra 2 weeks, but that's the best I can do." Relief flooded her. "Thank you. That helps more than you know." 2 weeks. That was all she had to find a way to make money. Step 2. Find income. Fast. Sophia sat on her couch, staring at her resume. She hadn't worked in over a year. Ryan had convinced her to quit her finance job, promising she didn't have to worry about money. She had been foolish enough to believe him. Now she had no income and a massive gap in her resume. Her first instinct was to start applying to jobs online. She fired off dozens of applications to financial firms, hoping someone would overlook the employment gap. Hours passed with no responses. By evening, frustration turned into fear. She needed money now. She opened her laptop and started looking for freelance finance work. She had skills. She knew how to manage accounts, analyze investments, and develop business strategies. Surely someone would pay for that. She signed up on multiple gig platforms and created her first financial consultation listing. Her first job, reviewing a small business's cash flow strategy for $50. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Step 3. Ask for help, even when it hurts. Sophia had always been proud, too proud to ask for help, but now she had no choice. That evening, she sat in her car outside Lillian's apartment, debating whether to go inside. Her best friend had warned her about Ryan before. Admitting Lillian was right. That stung, but Sophia needed someone on her side. Taking a deep breath, she knocked on the door. Lillian opened it, her eyes widening in surprise. "Sophia." The second Sophia saw her, the dam broke. Tears streamed down her face. Lillian pulled her inside without hesitation. "Tell me everything." For the first time, Sophia let it all out. The text message, the empty accounts, the divorce papers. Lillian listened, her expression unreadable. When Sophia finished, Lillian exhaled. "I knew that bastard was no good. I just didn't know he was this evil." Sophia wiped her face. "I don't know what to do, Lil." Lillian's eyes softened. "Yes, you do. You're going to get up, rebuild your life, and make sure he regrets ever messing with you." Sophia swallowed hard. "I don't even know where to start." Lillian grabbed her laptop. "We start tonight." Together, they worked late into the night, polishing Sophia's resume, setting up her freelance profile, and brainstorming ways for her to make money. For the first time since Ryan had left, Sophia felt hope. A glimpse of revenge. The next morning, Sophia woke up to an email notification. "Congratulations! Your first client has booked a financial consultation." Her heart pounded. She had made her first $50 on her own. It wasn't much, but it was proof. Ryan hadn't destroyed her. She was still standing. She opened her laptop to start preparing for the consultation, but a sudden thought crossed her mind. If Ryan had hidden money from her, where had he put it? A slow, dangerous smile spread across her lips. It was time to start looking. Sophia sat at the small kitchen table in Lillian's apartment, staring at the notes she had scribbled down the night before. Her first $50. It wasn't much, but it was a start. She had spent hours researching how to market herself as a financial consultant, but deep down she knew the truth. $50 wouldn't save her. She had 2 weeks before rent was due, barely any food left in her fridge, and nothing to her name but a laptop and a pile of debt Ryan had left behind. The reality of her situation was suffocating. She had built her life around a man who had methodically planned her downfall. Now she had to rebuild, alone. Sophia knew she couldn't hide in Lillian's apartment forever. She had spent 2 days wallowing in shock, but now she needed to act. She took a deep breath and got dressed, choosing the most professional outfit she could still afford to wear, a simple blouse and black slacks. If she was going to find work, she had to at least look like she hadn't just lost everything. Her first stop? The grocery store. As she walked through the aisles, carefully calculating what she could afford, she felt humiliated. She used to shop without a second thought. Now she was checking every price tag, making sure she didn't go over the $20 bill in her pocket. At checkout, she handed the cashier the money, forcing a smile. She prayed her card wouldn't decline. It didn't. But the moment she walked out of the store, the weight of her reality crushed her. This was her life now, counting every dollar, struggling for the basics, all because of Ryan. A fury burned inside her, stronger than before. He had done this to her, and he was walking free. That thought was unbearable. She wouldn't let him win. Sophia spent the next few days applying for full-time jobs in finance. Rejection after rejection flooded her inbox. Some companies didn't even bother responding. Others politely turned her down, citing her employment gap as a concern. She stared at the screen, anger rising in her throat. The employment gap Ryan had convinced her to take. He had told her to quit her job, promised her she didn't need to work. And now, that decision was haunting her. Every job posting started looking the same. 5+ years of experience required, immediate availability preferred, strong industry references needed. The last one stung the most. Ryan had been her biggest reference. Now he was her greatest enemy. She closed her laptop, feeling a lump form in her throat. She needed money, fast, and no one was willing to hire her. 2 nights later, Sophia lay awake staring at the ceiling. Bills were piling up. Time was running out. Then, an idea struck her. Ryan had stolen from her, which meant there had to be a trail. She grabbed her laptop and started digging. If he had hidden money, she was going to find it. Her first stop, their old joint accounts transaction history. As expected, Ryan had wiped it clean. But when she looked deeper, something caught her eye. Repeated transfers to an unknown account over the past 6 months. The amounts were inconsistent, sometimes small, sometimes large, but the pattern was there. He had been siphoning money away before he left. Her heart pounded. Where had it gone? She copied the account number and ran a quick check. It was linked to a private investment portfolio under Ryan's name. A slow smile spread across her lips. He thought he was so smart, but he had left a trail, and Sophia was about to follow it. Sophia took the account number to a friend in finance, a former colleague who still worked in the industry. She didn't give too many details, just that she suspected financial misconduct. Her friend agreed to help and ran a check. A day later, Sophia got a call. "I don't know what's going on," her friend said, voice cautious, "but your husband, well, ex-husband, is moving money into multiple shell companies. This looks shady." Sophia's stomach tightened. "How shady?" "I'm talking fraud-level shady. If he's caught, he's in serious trouble." A rush of vindication flooded her. Ryan had not just abandoned her. He had been committing financial crimes. And now, she had proof. That night, Sophia sat alone, staring at the evidence on her laptop. She had always trusted Ryan. She had built a life around him. She had given him everything. And in return, he had stolen from her, left her with nothing, and disappeared. The pain of that betrayal had felt unbearable before. But now it fueled her. Ryan thought he had won, but he had underestimated her. She wasn't some naive woman he could abandon without consequence. She was going to fight back, and when she was done, he was going to regret every single thing he had done to her. Sophia took a deep breath and started outlining her next steps. She wasn't just going to survive. She was going to destroy Ryan Caldwell. She pulled up her freelance job listings and raised her prices. If she was going to rebuild, she needed to make real money. And fast. Then she sent an anonymous tip to an investor watchdog group, attaching the account numbers she had uncovered. It was risky, but she was done being a victim. Ryan's downfall was coming, and this time, she was in control. Sophia sat in the dim light of Lillian's kitchen, her laptop open in front of her, the blue glow illuminating the hardened expression on her face. She had spent hours poring over bank transactions, corporate filings, and obscure business dealings, and one thing was becoming abundantly clear. Ryan hadn't just stolen from her, he'd stolen from others too. Her fingers hovered over the trackpad as she stared at the numbers on the screen. It was all there. The shell companies, the fraudulent wire transfers, the offshore accounts hidden behind layers of corporate anonymity. Ryan had built an entire empire of deceit, and he had used their joint finances to fund it. A cold, bitter laugh escaped her lips. She had once thought of him as brilliant. Now she saw him for what he really was, a fraud, a manipulator, and a coward. She needed to be smart about this. Ryan had disappeared, but his name still showed up in legal documents, proving he was still moving money. He wasn't running from the law, not yet, which meant she still had a chance to stop him before he got too far. Sophia reached for her phone and dialed her former colleague, Eric Monroe, the forensic accountant who had helped her uncover Ryan's secret accounts. The phone rang twice before he picked up. "You really aren't going to let this go, are you?" Eric's voice was tired, but there was a hint of admiration in it. "Not a chance," Sophia replied, gripping the edge of the table. "I found more." A sigh. "Okay, I'm listening." "I traced some of the transactions to an investment firm in the Caymans. Ryan set up a holding company there under a fake executive's name, but the linked accounts lead right back to him." Eric let out a low whistle. "That's bold and incredibly illegal." Sophia's jaw tightened. "Exactly. I need to know if there's a way to expose him." There was a pause on the other end. "Sophia, you're playing a dangerous game. If he realizes you're the one digging into his finances, he won't take it lightly." "I don't care," she said sharply. "He took everything from me. He left me with nothing. If he thinks I'm just going to sit here and let him get away with it, then he never really knew me at all." Eric exhaled. "All right, I'll run some deeper checks. If we can connect him directly to these accounts, we might be able to get him on financial fraud." Sophia closed her eyes for a brief moment, feeling the first flicker of hope. "Thank you." "Just be careful," Eric warned. "Ryan isn't stupid. If he's still moving money, that means he's still got a plan." Sophia ended the call and leaned back in her chair, staring at the ceiling. Ryan still had a plan. Well, so did she. The next morning, Sophia woke up to an email notification. She opened it and felt her breath hitch. "Anonymous tip submission received." The investor watchdog group had accepted her report. She clicked through, scanning the confirmation message. The case had been forwarded to financial regulators, and if the information was valid, they would launch an investigation into Ryan's activities. Sophia's heart pounded. She had set the wheels in motion. If Ryan thought he could walk away untouched, he was about to get a rude awakening. But she wasn't done yet. She needed to see him. Sophia spent the next 3 days watching the online financial networks, tracking any movement connected to Ryan's companies. Then, late one night, she found what she was looking for. A private networking event for elite investors was being held at the Grand Sterling Hotel, an event Ryan had attended every year when they were together. If he was still trying to secure new investments, there was a high chance he would be there. Sophia didn't hesitate. She was going to face him. The evening of the event, Sophia stood outside the Grand Sterling Hotel, her heart hammering against her ribs. The entrance buzzed with activity. Wealthy investors, high-powered executives, and corporate sharks mingling under the dazzling chandeliers. And then she saw him. Ryan, dressed in a tailored suit, a glass of champagne in hand, smiling as if he hadn't destroyed her life. Rage curled in Sophia's chest, but she forced herself to stay calm. She had come here with a purpose. She wasn't the same woman he had walked away from. She straightened her shoulders and walked inside. She made her way toward the networking area, her sharp gaze locked on Ryan. As she approached, he turned, and their eyes met. For a fraction of a second, shock flashed across his face. Then it was gone, replaced by that infuriating smirk he always wore when he thought he was in control. "Sophia," he said smoothly, lowering his glass. "Didn't expect to see you here." Her smile was razor-sharp. "That makes two of us." Ryan tilted his head slightly, eyes narrowing. "What are you doing here?" She let the question hang between them for a moment. Then she took a deliberate step closer. "I wanted to see for myself how a man who abandoned his wife and stole everything she had still manages to show his face in public." Ryan chuckled, shaking his head. "Still dramatic, I see." Sophia's nails dug into her palms, but she refused to rise to the bait. "And you're still a coward." Ryan exhaled, glancing around as if making sure no one was listening. "Look, I don't know what you think you're doing here, but I moved on. You should too." Sophia leaned in slightly, lowering her voice. "Oh, I have. But you should know, Ryan. Your past is about to catch up with you." His smirk faltered. "Those offshore accounts you thought were hidden? The shell companies? The fake investment deals?" She watched his expression shift, a flicker of unease crossing his face. "People are asking questions, Ryan. Important people." For the first time, he looked nervous. Sophia smiled. "I hope you enjoyed your little disappearing act, because the next time you try to run, you might not have a choice." She turned to leave, savoring the way his expression darkened with realization. As she walked out of the hotel, her heart pounded, but this time it wasn't fear. It was the thrill of knowing she was winning. Ryan had no idea what was coming next. Sophia walked away from the Grand Sterling Hotel, her pulse racing, but her mind clear. She had seen it, the flicker of unease in Ryan's eyes, the way his jaw clenched when she mentioned the offshore accounts. He was worried, and that meant she had power. He wasn't untouchable anymore. That night, she sat at Lillian's dining table, her laptop open, scrolling through the financial records she had managed to dig up. She wasn't just going to let the authorities handle this. She wanted to make the first move. Ryan had taught her a cruel lesson. Money is power, and the one who controls it controls everything. Now it was her turn to show him she had learned. She stared at her screen, clicking through documents, her brain working faster than her fingers. She had two goals. 1. Cut off his access to future money. 2. Make sure his past fraudulent activities came to light. She sent another anonymous tip, this time not just to financial regulators, but to several business news outlets that covered corporate fraud. She didn't give them everything, just enough breadcrumbs to make them curious, details about suspicious wire transfers, fake shell companies, and investor money being funneled into hidden accounts. Within hours, one of the journalists responded, "Can we talk? Off the record for now." Sophia smirked. Exactly what she wanted. The next morning, Sophia met the reporter at a quiet cafe downtown. She had chosen a table near the window where she could watch the street, just in case. Trust wasn't something she could afford anymore. The journalist, a sharp-looking woman named Megan Carter, slid into the seat across from her. "You have my attention." Sophia folded her hands on the table. "Good, because I have a story you're going to want to follow." Megan leaned in. "You're saying Ryan Caldwell, former executive and rising star in the finance world, is committing fraud?" Sophia nodded. "I'm saying he's been laundering money through fake businesses for over a year, and he's still doing it." Megan's pen scratched against her notepad. "And how do you know this?" Sophia hesitated, then leaned forward. "Because he's my ex-husband, and he stole everything from me before disappearing." Megan's eyebrows lifted slightly. "That's quite a claim." "It's not a claim," Sophia said coolly. "It's a fact, and I can prove it." She slid a USB drive across the table. Megan picked it up, weighing it in her hand. "What's on here?" "Documents, bank transactions, evidence of wire fraud. I don't have everything yet, but I have enough to get your attention." Megan's gaze sharpened. "If this is legit, you just gave me a bombshell story." Sophia met her eyes. "I don't need a story. I need him exposed." Megan smirked. "Trust me, if this is real, he's about to have a very bad week." That night, Sophia sat in front of her laptop, refreshing the news page every few minutes. She knew Megan wouldn't publish immediately. Journalists had to fact-check, verify sources, but she also knew Ryan wouldn't be able to hide once this hit the headlines. Her phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number. "I don't know what you're playing at, but you're making a mistake." Sophia's breath hitched. It had to be Ryan. She smirked and typed back, "Feeling nervous?" 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then nothing. Sophia leaned back. Good. Let him sweat. The next morning, she woke up to chaos. Ryan Caldwell, under investigation for financial misconduct. The headline was bold, sitting at the top of every major business news site. Megan had published the first article, exposing Ryan's offshore accounts and suspicious business dealings. The story had spread like wildfire. Sophia's phone buzzed again, this time an unknown caller. She let it ring. Then another call, then another. She finally answered on the 4th ring. "Hello?" A male voice, tight with anger. "Sophia, what the hell did you do?" She smiled. "Hello to you too, Ryan." "You think this is funny?" he snapped. "Do you have any idea what you've started?" Sophia kept her voice calm. "I didn't start anything, Ryan. You did. I'm just making sure everyone sees it." There was a pause. Then a low chuckle, though there was no humor in it. "You really think you're in control here?" "I don't think," she said smoothly. "I know." Ryan exhaled sharply. "You're making a mistake, Sophia. You don't know who you're dealing with." "Neither do you." She hung up. Her heart pounded, but she refused to feel fear. Ryan was scared. That meant she was winning. The fallout from the article was immediate. Investors started pulling out of deals with Ryan's companies. His assets were being frozen pending investigation. Financial analysts were debating whether he would be charged. Sophia watched it all unfold, savoring every second. Then she got a call from Eric. "You might want to see this," he said, sending her a link. She clicked it. A leaked internal memo from one of Ryan's former companies, stating that they had cut all ties with him to protect their reputation. Ryan was being abandoned. Sophia took a deep breath. It was working. But she wasn't done yet. That evening she went out for a walk, needing to clear her head. As she turned a corner, she felt a presence behind her. Someone was following her. She quickened her pace. A deep voice spoke. "We need to talk." She whirled around. Ryan, standing just a few feet away, hands in his pockets, looking calm but dangerous. Sophia crossed her arms. "What's the matter, Ryan? Not used to people holding you accountable?" He stepped closer. "I don't know what you think you're doing, but you need to stop." Sophia tilted her head. "Or what?" His jaw tightened. "You're playing in a world you don't understand." She smirked. "That's where you're wrong. I understand it perfectly. I learned from the best, remember?" Ryan's expression darkened. "You have no idea how deep this goes." She took a step forward, closing the distance. "Oh, I think I do. And here's the thing, Ryan. You have nothing left to threaten me with. You took everything from me, but now—" She leaned in slightly. "Now, I'm the one with power." For the first time, she saw it in his eyes. Fear. Ryan exhaled sharply and shook his head. "You're going to regret this." Sophia smiled. "I doubt that." She turned and walked away, feeling his eyes burning into her back. She had just landed the first real strike, and she wasn't stopping now. Sophia walked away from Ryan, feeling his burning gaze on her back, but she didn't turn around. She didn't need to. She had already seen it, the flicker of fear in his eyes, the realization that he was losing control. Ryan Caldwell, the man who had once orchestrated her downfall, was now the one scrambling, and that was only the beginning. She reached the street, took a deep breath, and hailed a cab. As she settled into the seat, she pulled out her phone. Her notifications were flooded. Calls from unknown numbers, emails from reporters, and messages from contacts she hadn't spoken to in years. Ryan's downfall wasn't just a possibility anymore, it was happening. Corporate backlash. The next morning, Sophia woke up to a storm of headlines. Former executive Ryan Caldwell under investigation for fraud. Anonymous source leaks evidence of offshore accounts. Investors cut ties with Caldwell Enterprises amid scandal. Sophia smirked as she scrolled. Every major financial news site was covering it, and the impact was immediate. By noon, 3 of Ryan's biggest investors had pulled out. His last major business deal had collapsed overnight, and his company's stock was plummeting. He was losing everything. Sophia's phone buzzed. It was Eric. "You've done it now," he said. "Ryan's entire portfolio is in free fall." Sophia exhaled slowly. "Good." "Good? Sophia, this isn't just a slap on the wrist. Regulators are looking into his transactions. His lawyers are scrambling. If this keeps up, he could face criminal charges." She leaned back in her chair, feeling a slow satisfaction settle over her. "Then I guess he should have thought twice before ruining my life." Eric hesitated. "Are you sure you're ready for this? He's not the type to go down quietly." Sophia's grip tightened on the phone. "Neither am I." Ryan loses his power. By the end of the week, Ryan's empire was crumbling. His business accounts were frozen. His former associates were distancing themselves. Board members were demanding answers. He had spent years playing the game, manipulating the system to his advantage. But now, he was completely exposed. And Sophia wasn't done. She had one more final move. She dialed a number she hadn't used in years. The line clicked, and a familiar voice answered. Damian Brooks. Damian was one of the most powerful corporate strategists in the city, someone who had once worked closely with Ryan before cutting ties over ethical differences. In other words, Damian had hated Ryan for years. "Sophia Reynolds." Damian's smooth voice came through the phone. "What an unexpected surprise." "I have an opportunity for you," she said. "I'm listening." The ultimate betrayal. Damian met Sophia at a high-end restaurant later that evening. He was dressed impeccably, sipping a glass of bourbon as he leaned back in his chair. "You've piqued my curiosity," he admitted. "What's this about Ryan Caldwell?" Sophia placed a thick folder on the table. "This is everything you need to dismantle him. His fraudulent dealings, his hidden assets, the shady contracts." Damien's eyes gleamed with interest as he flipped through the pages. "I must say, I never expected you to be the one delivering his downfall," she smirked. "Neither did he." Damien closed the folder and folded his hands. "And what do you want in return?" "Simple. I want Ryan completely ruined. I want him blacklisted. I want him to feel what it's like to have nothing." Damien chuckled. "Cold, I like it." He took a sip of his drink. "Consider it done." Ryan hits rock bottom. The next morning, Ryan woke up to another devastating blow. The company he had spent years building, seized, his lawyers gone, his assets frozen indefinitely, and the worst part? He couldn't fight back, because the moment he tried, the weight of the evidence against him crushed any chance of redemption. Ryan was finally powerless. For the first time in his life, he had lost. And Sophia? Ryan sat in his penthouse, his fingers tapping against the armrest of his chair. The city lights sprawled out in front of him, but for the first time, they didn't feel like a kingdom under his control. They felt like a cage. The news had gone from bad to worse. His frozen accounts, the collapsed deals, the mounting legal scrutiny, everything was spiraling. He had spent years meticulously crafting his empire, playing the financial world like a game of chess, always 10 steps ahead. But this time, he had been outplayed, and he knew exactly who had done it. His phone vibrated, a call from his last remaining legal advisor. Ryan let it ring twice before answering. "Tell me you have good news." A long pause, then a deep sigh. "Ryan, the SEC is officially investigating, and your former investors are cooperating." Ryan shut his eyes, his grip tightening on the phone. "That's not an answer." The lawyer hesitated. "You don't have a way out of this. It's only a matter of time before criminal charges come into play." Ryan felt a wave of frustration rise in his chest, but he didn't let it show. "So, what do I do?" Another pause. Then, in a careful voice, the lawyer said, "You need to settle. Walk away with what little you have left, before it gets worse." Ryan exhaled slowly. He didn't respond, because deep down he knew it was already too late. The final blow. Sophia sat across from Damien Brooks in his sleek, high-rise office, sipping a cup of coffee as she watched the stock ticker on the large screen in front of her. Ryan's last remaining business assets were sinking. Damien leaned back in his chair, watching her with amusement. "You've done what many tried and failed to do." Sophia raised an eyebrow. "And what's that?" "Taken down Ryan Caldwell." She set her cup down. "I wasn't trying to take him down. I was making sure he never did this to anyone else." Damien smirked, spoken like someone who knows exactly how to wield power. Sophia ignored the comment and turned her focus back to the screen. There was one more thing she needed to do. The confrontation. Later that evening, Sophia received a text from an unknown number. "We need to talk." She knew it was Ryan. She had been expecting this. She typed back one word. "Where?" An hour later, she walked into the dimly lit, nearly empty rooftop bar where Ryan was waiting. He was no longer the untouchable businessman she had once admired. His suit was slightly disheveled, his posture more rigid than usual. For the first time, he looked like a man with everything to lose. Sophia took a seat across from him. "I was wondering when you'd reach out." Ryan exhaled, rubbing his temples. "What do you want, Sophia?" She tilted her head. "That's funny. I was going to ask you the same thing." His jaw tightened. "You've made your point." She leaned forward slightly. "Have I? Because from where I'm sitting, I think I could push a little further." His hands clenched into fists. "You've already ruined me." Sophia smirked. No, Ryan, you ruined yourself. I just made sure everyone saw it. He let out a bitter laugh. Is that what you think? That you're some kind of hero? That you're better than me? Sophia's expression remained calm. I don't have to be better than you, Ryan. I just have to make sure you never get the chance to hurt anyone else the way you hurt me. Ryan leaned back, looking at her with an unreadable expression. So what now? Do you want an apology? A confession? What do you need to finally feel like you've won? Sophia stood up, adjusting her coat. I don't need anything from you, Ryan. That's the difference between us. You took everything from me, and I still came out stronger. But you, she gestured around. You're sitting here, in the ruins of your own making, wondering what went wrong. Ryan remained silent. Sophia picked up her purse and turned to leave. But before she walked away, she looked back one last time. I don't hate you, Ryan. That would mean I still care, and I don't. And with that, she walked out, leaving him alone in the bar, a man with nothing left. The new Sophia. The next few weeks moved quickly. Ryan's legal troubles intensified. Former business partners cut ties. His assets were seized. And the final blow, Sophia had helped ensure he would never be able to work in the financial industry again. But she wasn't thinking about Ryan anymore, because for the first time in years, she was finally free. Sophia had built something new, a consulting firm dedicated to helping women protect their financial independence. She had learned the hard way that money was power, and she was determined to never let anyone control hers again. Her company grew faster than she expected. Investors respected her, clients trusted her, and her name was quickly becoming one of the most influential in finance. One afternoon, she was sitting in her office when Lillian walked in, holding a newspaper. You're going to want to see this. Sophia took the paper and read the headline. Ryan Caldwell declares bankruptcy following fraud scandal. She let out a small laugh, shaking her head. Lillian smirked. How does it feel, knowing you did this? Sophia leaned back in her chair, considering the question. Then she smiled. It feels like a beginning. She had won. Sophia stood by the floor-to-ceiling window of her new office, gazing out at the skyline. The city stretched before her, pulsing with life, ambition, and opportunities. Just months ago, she had felt trapped in its towering buildings, suffocated by betrayal and uncertainty. Now, she was on top of it. Her office was sleek, modern, and buzzing with energy. Her name, Sophia Reynolds Consulting, was printed in bold letters on the glass door. What had once been a desperate attempt to survive had now become a powerful force in the finance industry. A knock at the door broke her thoughts. Lillian poked her head in, smirking. Your next client is here, and you're going to love this one. Sophia arched an eyebrow. Who is it? Lillian stepped aside, and an older woman in an elegant navy suit walked in. Eleanor Hayes. Sophia's lips parted slightly in surprise. Eleanor was a renowned business magnate, a woman whose influence in finance stretched across continents. The fact that she was standing here meant something big was about to happen. Eleanor extended a hand. Miss Reynolds, I've heard a lot about you. Sophia shook her hand firmly. I'm honored. Please have a seat. Eleanor sat across from her, crossing her legs with effortless poise. You're quite the talk of the industry these days. Taking down Ryan Caldwell. That was a bold move. Sophia tilted her head, her expression unreadable. I didn't take him down. He did that all by himself. Eleanor's lips curled slightly. Still, it takes skill to outmaneuver a man who once believed himself untouchable. Sophia didn't deny it. Eleanor leaned forward. I came here because I want to work with you. I've built an empire over the last 3 decades, but there's a shift happening in the financial world. A demand for integrity, accountability, and leadership that actually means something. and I think you're the kind of person who can help me lead that change." Sophia's heart pounded, but she kept her expression composed. This wasn't just another client. This was an opportunity to redefine everything. "What exactly are you proposing?" Sophia asked. Eleanor's gaze was sharp. "A partnership. Your firm would oversee financial integrity audits for my network of companies. You'd be ensuring no one like Ryan ever gets near my businesses." Sophia exhaled slowly. This was huge, but she had learned her lesson about blind trust. "Why me?" Eleanor smiled. "Because you don't just understand finance, Sophia. You understand betrayal, survival, and rebuilding. You're not just another consultant. You're someone who's been through the fire and came out sharper, and that's the kind of person I want on my team." For a moment, Sophia let those words sink in. She had spent so long fighting to prove she wasn't just a victim, that she wasn't defined by what Ryan had done to her. Now, she was being recognized for her strength, not her past. She reached for the contract Eleanor had placed on the desk, scanning the terms. Everything was in her favor, fair, lucrative, and built on mutual respect. Finally, she looked up and smiled. "You've got yourself a deal." Eleanor extended her hand again. "Welcome to the future, Miss Reynolds." Sophia shook it, sealing a new chapter in her life. Meanwhile, in a different part of the city, Ryan sat in the dimly lit, nearly empty office of his attorney. His face was blank, his eyes dull as he listened to the final assessment of his situation. "You have two options," the lawyer said. "Settle and avoid criminal charges, or fight and risk losing everything." Ryan let out a slow breath. "And what happens if I fight?" The lawyer folded his hands. "You don't have the resources for that. Every major financial institution has cut ties with you. Your assets are either seized or frozen. The evidence against you is damning. If you go to court, there's a real possibility of prison time." Ryan clenched his jaw. Prison. That word alone made his skin crawl. He had built everything from nothing. He had played the game smarter than anyone, and yet here he was, beaten, defeated. And by who? Sophia, the woman he had dismissed, the woman he had taken everything from without a second thought. And now she had destroyed him. His lawyer shifted uncomfortably. "Ryan, I need an answer." Ryan closed his eyes. He had never begged for anything in his life. He had always been the one pulling the strings, the one controlling the board. But now, he was nothing. After a long silence, he exhaled shakily and said, "Settle." Because what choice did he have? 1 year later, Sophia walked through the doors of the Women in Finance Leadership Summit, dressed in an elegant black dress, confidence radiating from her. She had been invited as a keynote speaker, a role that once would have felt impossible. As she stepped onto the stage, the applause was deafening. She smiled, scanning the room. So many women, leaders, entrepreneurs, and visionaries, all looking up at her, waiting to hear her story. She took a deep breath. "When I first entered this industry, I believed that trust and partnership were the most important things," she began. "But trust, when placed in the wrong hands, can be weaponized. I learned that the hard way. I had everything taken from me. And for a while, I thought that meant I was powerless." She paused, looking at the faces before her. "But what I realized was this: losing everything doesn't make you powerless. It makes you dangerous. Because once you have nothing left to lose, you finally understand what truly matters." A wave of murmurs passed through the audience, the weight of her words sinking in. "I stand before you today, not as someone who was broken by betrayal, but as someone who rebuilt herself from the ground up. And if there's one thing I want you all to remember, it's this: no one has the power to take away your future unless you let them." The room erupted into applause. Sophia took it all in, a slow smile spreading across her lips. She had won, not just against Ryan, not just against the system that had once dismissed her, but against every doubt she had ever had about herself. She stepped down from the stage, her heart light, her future limitless. Sophia Reynolds had taken back her power, and she was just getting started. What would you do if you were in Sophia's shoes? Do you think she made the right choices, or would you have handled it differently? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. On a scale from 1 to 10, how satisfying was Ryan's downfall? Let us know. Love powerful stories like this? Hit that like button and subscribe for more gripping tales of revenge, resilience, and ultimate success. Want more stories where the underdog rises to power? Let us know in the comments what kind of story you want next. Type power move if you read till the end. Let's see who made it this far.